Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing aside.
The case against Bryan Kohberger is quickly moving toward trial. As expected, the state will pursue the death penalty for the murders of Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle.
The question really was posed, if you're not going to pursue the death penalty on a case like this.
The Goncalves family now voicing concerns about the crime scene on King Road and plans to demolish it. I'm Angenette Levy, and thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. Bryan Kohberger was back in court this week, where his lawyers asked the judge to assist them in obtaining some evidence they want from the prosecution.
These are training records of 3 specific police officers. Your Honor, we have not asked for training records for every officer that has had anything to do with the case. I would not want to stand here and let the court think that this is an exhaustive list of the officers that we might need training records for. But these are 3 officers that we've requested them for, and the state has indicated they're not willing to get us their training records. These 3 officers are officers that have each conducted critical interviews with critical witnesses in the case, made decisions about the interviews, made decisions about evidence, and conducted other kinds of investigations. We seek their training records to understand their processes.
Kohberger's court appearance came a day after the state filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Kohberger, which was expected. Prosecutors said the crimes were especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity. The prosecution filed the death penalty notice days after the defense filed a document claiming there's no connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. They also said none of the victims' DNA was found in Kohberger's car, home, office, or apartment. Since the judge loosened restrictions on the non-dissemination order in this case, the attorney for Kaylee Goncalves' family, Shanon Gray, spoke with me about the state seeking the death penalty and more. Shanon, how is the family doing given that the fact that the state has given notice that they will pursue the death penalty against Bryan Kohberger?
Well, I think that was expected. I think it's a relief to the families. It's up to the prosecutor to decide whether or not they're going to pursue the death penalty. The victims' families, hopefully have some input, but ultimately it's their decision. That we met with the prosecutor, and I think they met with the Mogen family and the Kernodle family, and I'm sure they had conversations with the Chapin family on the case. And so I think it's more of a relief more than anything. So,
how did the meeting with the prosecutor go?
It was fine. We just kind of listened, and I think Christy and Steve and Olivia and the family is, the question really was posed. If you're not going to pursue the death penalty on a case like this, what kind of case would you ever pursue the death penalty on? So I think that was a good question for them, and ultimately they are pursuing the death penalty. So.
The Goncalves family has been the most vocal of all of the victims' families in this case. Gray says the Goncalveses are looking forward as that October trial date nears. They're taking comfort in their other children and a new addition to the family. They do have the grandchild now. I saw that, obviously I think everybody's seen that Olivia had the baby. The baby was in court for the arraignment and everything like that. That has to provide some measure of comfort, I think, to Steve and Christy.
Yeah, they have their other children, obviously. Kaylee was a big part of their lives, a big part of the whole family's lives, and there's, that can never be replaced in any way or shape or form. But the support of the family, they're a tight family. They're good. They balance each other out. I love them to death, and I think they'll always be a part of my life moving forward. You go through the fire with people, and it bonds you in ways that you sometimes don't even understand. So,
as the families grieve, there is one thing that is making that process a little more difficult. The University of Idaho now owns the home where Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana were murdered last November. The school plans to move forward with razing the house. Gray says 3 of the families want it preserved until after the trial, despite the prosecution and the defense telling the court they approved of the crime scene being released.
we have made it very clear to the University of Idaho that we do not want that house to be demolished, and they are ignoring us completely. And when I say ignoring them, us, I mean that they respond and they say, okay, yeah, we understand what you're saying, but basically tough cookie. We're going to go ahead forward with it because they say that it's for the good of the community and good for the University of Idaho, but it's not. It's not the good for the community or the University of Idaho. It may be good for the University of Idaho for everyone to hurry up and forget that there was a murder that occurred right off campus, but it's not for the victims' families. And that's a massive piece of evidence. And we've stressed to them over and over about the Carnudo family, the Mogan family, and the Goncalves family do not want that house to be demolished. And they're moving forward anyway. They just don't really care. It's always been a little bit of a hurry up and grieve. We need to move on as the University of Idaho. So, I think it's frustrating. I think that I know that the prosecution and the defense have released, and the court has released the home to the University of Idaho because neither party is, I think, has made any objection to the demolition of the home.
The home was processed by Idaho State Police and held for many months. It's been under guard 24 hours a day since the morning of the murders. At one point, it was going to be released to the property owners, but the court halted that process at the request of the defense. The families are concerned it could still be needed for trial.
A big piece of evidence that potentially a jury might want to see it. I mean, there's sights and sounds and viewpoints and angles. It's an odd shaped house where witnesses were standing, where potentially the defendant was standing. Locations, how you could hear something, how you couldn't hear it, if there was video or any other evidence outside, what was the vantage point of those videos, if they picked up audio or anything. So a lot of things I think are important about that home. And we've just stressed, just hold on, wait till the trial is over and then do whatever you want with the property. But they will not listen. And it's frustrating for myself and the families, and them not really hearing us, but acting like they are. So we just, we want to let people know that we are adamantly against them demolishing that home, even though they have every right to do so. But if they think that they're doing it on behalf of the community or the victims' families, it's not true. They think it's for the best of the community and the best for the University of Idaho to move on and I guess try to erase the fact that there was a quadruple homicide right off of campus. Probably business motivated. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's but it's not taking into consideration the families and what we want to happen. And we're not saying you can't demolish it eventually. We're just saying that, hey, just don't do it until the trial is over. And then even if they get into trial and they say, and the jury's out or whatever it is, and we find out that it's not going to be needed, then go ahead and move forward then. But, it's a massive piece of evidence. And I think destroying it doesn't do anybody any good, other than the University of Idaho basically saying, hurry up and grieve. We hear you, but we're not listening to you.
Have they given you guys any indication of what they want to do with the property aside from raise the house?
I haven't really gotten into any details about what they want to do. I think they have different types of ideas and plans for it that we're not interested in right now. So we're interested in them preserving the home, not trying to make plans and kind of, ask us that we say that we don't want to have the house demolished and then ask us what we want to do with the property after you've demolished it. I mean, now you're going to listen to us?
I reached out to the University of Idaho for a comment about the King Road home and the concern the three families have about the demolition plans and what plans the university has for the home in the future. Spokesperson Jody Walker responded, "This week, we began the process of removing the personal items from the house for the families to claim if they wish. From there, we will move toward demolition. No start date has been set. We have been in contact with the families about the house since taking ownership last spring. Meanwhile, late last week, Judge amended the non-dissemination order in this case, but denied a request from Shanon Gray to be exempt from it. The judge clarified that Gray can speak to the media on behalf of the Goncalves family, but he has to be careful about what he says regarding evidence or other matters related to the trial. Gray tells me he plans to appeal the judge's ruling. The trial of Bryan Kohberger is scheduled for October. For Law and Crime, I'm Angenette Levy.